Hey everybody, welcome back to the Living Like Jesus podcast, where we learn to live like Jesus lived so that we can do what Jesus did. So last time we talked about the biblical foundation of the Sabbath, and this time we're going to get more into the practical of how do you begin to live this out. So I'm convinced, you've convinced me, I need a 24-hour period where every 7 days where I take a Sabbath. But what does that mean? What does that look like? So glad you're here. So we're going to talk through sort of the 4 rhythms that you can have in a Sabbath of stop, rest, delight, and worship. And each one of those is important. So we're just going to kind of start right at the beginning. When you talk about the Sabbath, one of the first things everybody says, and you talked about it last time, of like, what am I just supposed to stare at a wall?
Right.
There is an aspect of, and Lindsay, you mentioned it, that it's a stop from occupational work, that you stop those things and literally cut them off.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts. And that's important because, you've got to stop your work in order to rest. And then when you rest, you work from that rest. As we said last time, that rhythm of we don't work, and then take a vacation, because then we just come right back to the same rhythm, and all the same issues that wore us out before we left are still all there. Mm-hmm. But we're supposed to rest, then work, and then how God has put this personal rhythm in there. So when you talk about stopping your work, we got to talk about what does that look like? Yeah. What does that look like? So, Lindsay, why don't you tell us, what does that look like for you to kind of stop your work?
So, from an occupational side, that is work ceases. Like whenever there has to be a cutoff, and I think you do have to be pretty intentional with that, because if you constantly make yourself available from an occupational side, then the line gets kind of blurred about when you're available. And so the way that I work, as I work shift work, and whenever I'm done with that shift, my phone is like, I don't have my work email attached to my phone. They I think they would probably like me to, but I don't. And I'm not available whenever I'm not on duty. And I think just creating, however that looks, I know, like I said before, I know that this looks different for different people, but I think that you do have to be very intentional with the way that you set your boundaries of when work is done for you, and now you're at home and it's for your home life.
So you mentioned, and I wanted to ask you to go into detail here. So where we live, a lot of people, shift work is the thing. So you mentioned shift work. So when is your Sabbath? Does it alternate because of your shift work and that kind of thing?
Well, for me, I kind of gear mine around my family. And so especially like with the school year and with Eric's work schedule, I'm sure we'll talk about it later on, but I have different ways of practicing my own individual Sabbath. And then whenever it comes to us as a family unit, that usually starts on a Friday night and then goes into a Saturday. Because Eric's work schedule is Monday through Friday, pretty consistent. And then with the kids with school, that's kind of like a work week for them, and with their other activities and things like that. So for us, we still do it on starting on a Friday night, that being, and it looks different from day to day too. 'Cause like with Eric, he has to, there's a certain stop point for him with work, but for the week it's Friday. So.
I got you. Okay. John, what about you?
Yeah, one of the things I had to be honest with myself early on about was just because I'm not at work doesn't mean I'm not working. Because I would, you mentioned making yourself available at the wrong times. Yes. I was definitely guilty of that. I may not have been at the office, but my email was available. My text messaging was available. I was maybe even working on stuff from work, because I like to do that. I like my job. So like I was always kind of plugged in and, on with what I was trying to do or trying to get done, or at the very least thinking about it. And so I've had to, when it comes to stopping for me, I've had to be really intentional about like asking the Lord to help me turn my brain off.
I got you.
From the work side of my life, because I'll sit there and maybe be present in body but not in mind, and so I've had to be very intentional. I thought it was interesting how you mentioned like they may like for me to have my work email on my phone, but I don't, like your work people. But I think boundaries are important when it comes to this, because the world, this isn't the pattern of the world. We talked about that last episode. So they're going to push back on this. They're going to be like, what do you mean you're not available to take a call on Saturday morning?
You're a pastor. You're supposed to be
right, exactly. And so I think that, but that for anybody, you know, to kind of have those boundaries in place. But to be honest, like, don't fall into the trap that says, well, I'm home, so that means that I'm Sabbathing.
Yes.
Stopping means to actually stop. And so that means to remove those work things like you described from the equation for that period of time.
Yeah.
That's what stopping means to me.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the idea of practicing Sabbath, because a lot of people, when you talk about, you know, spiritual disciplines, one of the main pushbacks is, I don't have time to add anything else to my schedule.
That's right.
Like I get my 15 to 30 minutes in the morning. I don't have time for anything beyond that, any kind of like prayer rhythm or anything. But when it comes to the Sabbath, it's not about adding. It's about, no, you got to take something out.
That's right.
You got to stop something. And it's important that we do. So like for us, you know, we kind of do like you. Our Sabbath starts on Friday night with a date night with my wife, and then it goes through Saturday till about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And for me, the way I stop everything is, I've got an iPhone, and so first of all, my computer never opens. So I make sure that never opens. But even on my iPhone, I have, they put those focus features on there. Not everybody uses them, but I use them because it's helpful to me. I have a Sabbath focus feature, which literally makes the phone almost like a brick, like a paperweight.
Yeah, it's
like my mom can call me, because she lives in our area and she needs to be able to get a hold of me. My kids, my wife, you can't.
No,
you can't call me.
Yeah,
on
I'm
Sabbath.
not part of your Sabbath.
No, I'm not. No, you're not.
The boundary.
I love you, but
just to be clear,
there's a boundary there. So if it goes, when you called, it goes straight to voicemail.
I get those every now and then. I know, okay,
yeah,
he's turned off for now.
I'm turned off, and it's literally programmed into my phone that I think it's 5 o'clock on Friday. It switches into that Sabbath focus mode, and it shuts everything down. All my notifications go away. Nobody can get through except for the few people that are dependent on you to be able to get through. That need to get through, and that I want to be able to get through. So for family reasons. So that's for us what it looks like to stop. So
one of the things with rest that really is really important is that this won't happen on accident.
And that's a great point.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to plan for that stop.
Yes.
Yep.
Because if you don't plan for the stop, it's just not a natural part of most of us. And so it may mean that, like, you get what you're normally getting done on your Sabbath time for work or whatever, you get that done at a different time in the week. And I think if we're honest, all of us waste some time every now and then so we can be more efficient. So maybe you have to be a little bit more efficient to get those things done on Wednesday, Thursday, if your Sabbath is a Friday or Saturday sort of
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
And that's what I mean by bought time, is to be intentional. A lot of people, and including myself, whenever we talk about rest and like what the day is, a lot of people always comment about being busy and just not having time to stop. But if you're intentional about it and you do what you need to, planning for the day of rest, then it's almost like a scheduled appointment that you have and that you're going to keep it.
That's it.
So.
Yeah. And it's also, it's just we mentioned this last time, but it's a form of worship that, all of us have things that we could keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
All three of us do. And I'm sure anybody listening, there's when we talk about stopping, it's, but I don't have to. No, you don't. But it is an acknowledgement that I don't run the world nor my life.
That's right.
That my life is I live dependently upon the Lord. And my life, when I stop everything that I'm working, He's not stopping. He keeps working. And it's just an acknowledgement, again, that we said before, I'm not in control, God is.
Yep.
And it's an intentional thing. So
living like Jesus can seem impossible at times. So we've created a free guide for you. Just go to the link in the description and you'll get a free guide to help you take your next steps in living like Jesus. Also, while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe.
You mentioned rest. So that's the next step. So you want to stop everything. Then you want to begin, what does rest actually look like? So talking about rest, really what we're talking about there is, it's not staring at the wall.
That's right.
Because that's not restful.
That's not just sleeping all day.
No, it's not sleeping all day. Taking a nap
could be a nap.
A good thing.
There's nothing wrong with a nap. My wife Amber would definitely want me to point that out, that naps could be a part of Sabbath.
I want you to point that out. I like napping.
I like napping.
You know, I wake up at, I like to wake up at 9 a.m. and then at 1 o'clock, I'm like, I think it's time for a nap.
Yeah.
So, because the rest of the week, it's up at 4:30 or 5 and go all day long till 9:30 or 10. So
I get it.
So a nap is good. So, but there's we want to do things when you talk about rest, it's just do the things that sort of instill energy into us instead of pulling something out of us. So for me, like I said, I like napping, I like reading. What are some of the things that y'all do to just rest?
Yeah, one of the things that Amber and I have figured out, this is something we can do together, is we have 10 acres. And so we like to mess around on the property, whether it be, we got all kind of animals now and, different things.
The ones
like
you
that.
haven't murdered?
Listen, it's a working farm.
People.
We're getting meat from this farm.
We're very aware.
So sometimes things have to die.
You send us pictures all the time.
Exactly. You mentioned Genesis
I feel really
last week.
misunderstood whenever you send them to me.
And so, sometimes things have to go to freezer camp. And
there
so
you go.
that happens. And so, but being able to do that stuff, it brings it. Some people would consider it work, and that's the weird part about this, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned this a couple of times. What's good for you for Sabbath is not necessarily what's good for me, and we don't need to project our own version of Sabbath onto somebody else. And it could be someone in your own house. You don't need to project that because, but it just so happens that that's one of the things that we do enjoy doing together because it brings us energy. We both like to be doing that type of stuff, and so it does bring us energy. And so working in the garden, being with the animals, and sometimes, honestly, one thing that we've started doing a little bit more of is just sitting on the porch, drinking coffee, just sitting there. And we don't always do that together, but that's part of our day for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same for me. We have similar interests. I think that a big part of rest and acknowledging the Sabbath is to acknowledge creation. And so the more that we can find ways to connect in that way, I think is just one of the best ways to be connected, with spiritually with Christ, along with other things, of course.
Sure.
But for us, it is, Eric is not a sit around the house person. I am. I can a good book and I'm good to go. But I can't do that with kids, and so they want to do things. And so usually we'll have some type of project that we do, but it's not we don't feel it to be work, like whether it's pressure washing the patio, doing something with the yard.
If we don't finish, it ain't the end of the world.
Yeah, if we have 2 pallets of mulch, that's what we're working on because that's what he goes and gets us. But whenever we get done, we all look at each other like we really enjoyed the day. Like this was a good day.
Yeah.
And then also sitting on the porch, talking. Lila came out and joined me on the porch this morning talking about I finished Jonah today a day early. Sorry, people.
Good for you.
And so we were talking about that. And so it's just, like I said earlier, to me, it's more about where our focus is. And it's where our mind goes. And everybody, it looks different.
I got asked a question like, well, can my rest be at the ball field or can my rest be... And I think it's a personal thing, and I think it's something that we should think about. Maybe you have something to add to this, but if anything, if it brings you stress,
yes.
If it brings you if you get home from that experience feeling zapped of energy, it wasn't Sabbath.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so could it be? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely,
maybe.
Definitely.
For me, it wouldn't be.
No, nor for me.
I get super stressed.
For me, it is. I love it.
But some people do,
I
and
love
so
it.
there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think it's a personal thing that you just have to ask yourself a question, how do you feel at the end of it?
Yeah.
Sabbath should be rejuvenating at the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where we live, it's, most of the men that I interact with, when you ask them, what's restful to you? Deer camp.
Yeah, I want to be in the woods.
Yeah, it's
deer
the
camp. And
Tiny
I'm looking,
woods.
and I'm like, no, man. No, I'm good.
Not for you.
Yeah, I want running water, a restroom that actually is a restroom, not a stump over there. So that's just not restful.
Well, me and Lindsay's husband and a couple of other guys from the church are on a lease together, and
Very primitive.
It's very primitive,
Very
but that is
primitive.
absolutely Sabbath for us.
I call it savage.
No, and honestly, Eric is he's in his mind. It's like he's he's carving out his time
Yeah.
to make his way over there.
Yeah.
Because him just sitting in the stand, it's not even deer season yet, it's about to be, but him just going there to sit. And really that's what it is. Like, it is disconnecting and unplugging
That's right.
from everything that brings you stress. And as long as you leave feeling refueled and recharged, then you have experienced the Sabbath.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's, rest bleeds right into the next aspect of it, which is delight.
Yeah.
That we don't just want to stop. It's not just about stopping everything and resting from everything, but it's also about incorporating these things. And we've mentioned a few, with
Sure.
some of these rhythms and habits of, like you talked about working outside with y'all's family. You don't come going to the deer stand. For me, it might be watching a good movie or going for a run or reading a book, whatever, or just spending time with my wife. There's a delight there. So, but it's also part of enjoying what God has given us and the life God's given us. And so kind of rest and delight, they kind of sometimes sort of blend together,
yeah.
So what is it, outside of the things y'all have already mentioned, and maybe there's not others, what is it that you kind of incorporate that you're just like, man, not only am I rested, but I'm like stoked. Like this was amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I can
Go
get
ahead.
nerd
Yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Well, it's just, gosh, there's so many things, and I think learning for myself to experience joy in just the ordinary things, even something so small, to recognize the perfect amount of energy a blade of grass has to come up to go from a seed to and even just like plants and trees, the way that butterflies, dandelions, as they spread out with the wind, it's just, there's so many things to take delight in. And we, one of my favorite ways that we do experience the joy of creation is we'll go down to Cameron and
I love it.
and it's super simple. That it doesn't take, there's not much effort that goes into it, and the kids love it. And just getting to even our gorgeous water that we have here, it's still a beautiful thing to experience, and just the vastness of it. And it's just it's my two favorite times of experiencing rest. It's been there.
This is why you and Amber are friends.
Yes.
Y'all talk about that stuff all the time, I'm sure. But
for me, like when y'all talk about going to the deer stand, I'm like, no, I want to go to the beach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even our beach.
Even our beach,
which is not the greatest beach.
Noise.
I mean,
The noise
yeah,
that's
just the
out
waves
there.
crashing. Because where we are,
I
you
agree
go
with
down,
that,
it's got
yeah.
those breakers, and just the waves hitting those rocks over and over and over again. It's just, it's a soothing thing. It's just a rhythm. I love being out by the ocean in the water.
It is.
yeah, one of the things that delight, as I've thought about this, because this isn't something that I've really thought about as being part of Sabbath before. But as we've learned this, one of the things I've realized is the delight that I get from time with like family, time with friends, and when I get to cook for people.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You know,
good.
what I mean?
That's a good one.
Everybody,
agree.
because like when I cook a lot, like
Yes.
too much sometimes.
Yeah.
like 60-pound potato salad.
50 pounds of
What?
potato salad in one sitting.
Why?
Yeah. About broke my countertop when he set it down.
Anyway,
gosh.
that's a story for a different time.
Another time, yeah.
But no, I just love, people look at me like, man, that was a lot of work. Are you sure? And I had a blast. It wasn't work for me, being able to do that and
Yes.
like watch people eat and hopefully enjoy the food and that sort of thing. I just absolutely love doing that. And it never feels like work.
No.
So let me ask you, do you ever, this is just kind of a little sidebar, but you can spend 6 hours preparing a meal and then they eat it in 6
It
minutes.
takes 20 minutes. Yeah. 20 minutes at the most with dessert and singing happy birthday.
Yeah. It was like, I've done that for like cooked all day and looked, it's like, that took me 6 hours and it's gone in 30 minutes. It's
That
just
means
poof.
they really like
Yeah,
it.
it happens every time.
Every
for
time
sure.
disappears. But
Especially
That's
because we
funny.
do like a lot of what we do is like one pot meals.
Yes.
So it's not like appetizer, this, that.
no.
It's literally.
It's not a
and then
progressive
over.
dinner. It's
No,
an
no.
aggressive dinner
It
where
is
you just go
aggressive,
at
very
it.
aggressive
So,
in a good way.
absolutely. So,
But that's my delight, man. It just brings me so much joy, and like to be with family and friends, to hang out. Like that's what I love to do. It's not that I don't ever like being by myself. I do love to be by myself sometimes, but the delighting part of my life, that's blessings of God that he has given
Absolutely.
us. It's just so
Yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Between
Agreed.
family, friends, creation, you mentioned
Yeah.
several things about creation.
I
I love
love
how
it.
you pointed out just this little simple things of even just, I just love that, a blade of grass of like, just
It
the
has
fact
the
that like
perfect amount of energy
that like
to-
God created
to do
it
what
and
it
needs.
God sustains even that little blade of grass.
Yeah.
So bringing that worship,
Yeah.
of course, the Sabbath is a gift from God, and it's not that worship, it's last, so he's last on the list. But worship should permeate all of these.
Kinda all
We
through
stop for
everything,
worship.
right?
We
Yeah.
rest to worship. We delight with worship. So how does worship get incorporated in this for you guys? Lindsay, I think you've already kind of hinted at it. Kind of speak more to, if you will, like how worship is a part of this. Like as you're looking at that blade of grass, how does worship begin to happen in your heart?
Well, it just, I feel like whenever I picture talking with Jesus, and like, do not take me the wrong way, he is everywhere. He's with me in the church building. Whenever I go to work, he's everywhere with me. But whenever I like picture him and like him like talking intimately with me, it's always in like a huge field. And so like whenever I experience his creation and just all the detail that he went into purely just for us to find delight in, there's always just like this huge heart of thankfulness, because it even like, and it just makes me just consider things, silly things, deep things. Me and Lila have a conversation if his favorite color is green or blue, because it has to be one of them.
Because it's everywhere.
She says he likes all the colors, but I say it has to be green or blue. so and it's just things like that. It's really the way that whenever we're in that time of Sabbath and just reflection, the way that our mind can focus and center whenever we're unplugged and disconnected. And it just, you can't help but have like a heart of gratitude and thankfulness, and you feel his love for you. And I find that I'm able to express my love and thankfulness to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. I love that. I think one of the things that I try to think about is it's not about, obviously with stopping, resting, delighting, we're doing things in some of that. And so it's not about like just opening the Bible and reading the word all day for 24 hours. That's not what
That's not a
would
bad
be.
thing if that's what
If
the
you
Lord
want to
calls
do that,
you to.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's never a bad thing. But it should probably be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Where we open the word. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is like look for, my Sabbath passages is kind of what I call them, of like getting to the heart of God for his people, and trying to meditate on that and like remind myself in this moment of rest of like how God feels about it. Because this world can beat us down. It can make us, it can twist us up. The enemy can lie to us about like the heart of God. And so just to be reminded of that, because in this moment, I'm not distracted by everything else because I've stopped and I've rested and I've done these other things, right? I prepared my heart to really receive. And so I've tried to dive into the word as part of worship to like receive from him who he is, how he feels about me.
Yeah.
And be reminded of that in those moments.
I think one good thing practice to do is personalizing those. So Psalm 23 is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I know it's probably a lot of people's favorite, and there's a reason, because it's amazing.
It is.
And the promises, but just that idea that the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. So I honestly, when you think through that on through worship, for me on a Sabbath, I just, like you said, picture Jesus talking to you in a field. I can literally like, all right, Lord, lay me down in that green pasture.
Sure.
Where all provisions are given by you, and I have no want, no needs except to be with you. And so it's taking time to reflect, I think, on verses, on nature. His fingerprint, I like to say, his fingerprint is all over his creation if you're willing to look for it.
So true.
If you're willing to look for it. It's there from the smallest of things to the grandest, of mountains, sunsets, an ocean, whatever it is that you have available to you for nature. It's everywhere.
In that book that I mentioned, and I mentioned it a few times in our small group, but sometimes I feel like I need to be part of like a monastery to go and have like a hard reset because of all just like the noise and distractions and things like that. And obviously that's not realistic. I'm not called to do that. I'm not able to do that. But in the book that I'm reading, and I love the writer for adding this in, but he says to find your inner monk or nun. And it's basically just calling you to find that because the Spirit puts in all of us that need for depth and serenity.
Yes.
And we find that in community with people. And he goes on to say that in the middle of a busy city, find the desert of monks and nuns.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And to hone in on that and to be able to have your mindset and your mind focus in the middle of your busy city, you know? And so it's just, and so now I'm just like, I need to find my inner monk. You know? It's like, I can do that.
Yes. Yeah. So, is that practicing the way?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
So, as far as resources for this,
It's a good resource.
That's a great resource. For really, that's one of the, John Mark Comer takes a lot of stuff from Dallas Willard, who was hugely influential to me, probably as much as he is for John Mark Comer. I'm just not as smart as John Mark Comer. So he wrote the book that I wish I had written and it's amazing.
Yes,
so if you haven't read Practicing the Way, you should read it. If you want to dive into the background of that stuff,
we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
too.
Dallas Willard books that you should read. We'll put those in the show notes as well. So there's a lot there. And then when it comes to Sabbath in particular, Walter Brueggemann has a book on the Sabbath, which is amazing, where he talks about, the things that we should practice and do during the Sabbath. We'll put that in there as well. So there's lots of information. And I love the fact that we're seeing a movement of spiritual formation where people are trying to recapture the life of Jesus.
Some of the things that we've
and
lost.
the practices of Jesus that we have lost, and that we've allowed, in all honesty, American culture to push into the church this idea of it's got to be rapid, it's got to be quick, it's got to be big, it's got to be whatever. And just the simple fact of I can stop, I can rest, I can delight, and I can worship. And I can do all of that sitting on my back porch.
The phrase Sabbath as resistance.
That's Brueggemann. Yeah,
Brueggemann is a huge phrase. We're resisting what the world wants for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And going with what God
And you have
Yes.
to. You have to. And you be intentional, and you have to
Very.
be just almost, I say, this is one of the areas, like, we don't like legalism, but be legalistic about this.
That's right.
I tell my wife, like, we're legalistic about our date night. It happens every Friday night. We don't miss it. But you also need to be legalistic about your Sabbath, because it's that important to our lives, and to our rhythm, and to our relationship with God first and with one another. Because, man, if you just keep going and you're trying to burn the candle at both ends, eventually there's going to be none of you left to give.
That's right.
And your family's going to suffer for that. Your friendships are going to suffer for that. And most importantly, your relationship with the Lord is going to suffer for that. So taking it back to, where we were last episode, there's more.
That's
Yes.
more.
There is more to life than just this constant cycle of go, 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 and then maybe find a little bit of rest at some point, just so I can go, 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 go again, which never works out in the long run.
No.
It really doesn't.
But that God has built this rest in Him, and let Him take care of the rest of life. So, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you all both for being here.
Thank
Lindsay,
you.
thank you for being here.
Thank
John's
you.
here all the
Enjoyed
time.
it.
Yeah.
We love John, but I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
It's been an encouragement to sit with you, and it was a delight for me to sit with you and to hear you talk about these
I
things.
appreciate you guys always.
Yes. So thank you all for being with us as well. So don't forget, before you head out, to hit the subscribe button for us here, where we learning to live like Jesus lived, so that we can do what Jesus did. We'll see you next time. So living like Jesus isn't something that comes naturally to us. And so we all need help in doing that. So we've created a free guide to help you out. Just click on the link in the description for you to take your next steps to live like Jesus.